3 weeks prior to the nuptials, Ryan terminated his engagement with his final client and returned home at an earlier hour, with the intention of rehearsing his wedding vows. He opened the front door and was met with a surprising sight: his beautiful fiancée, clad in a black cocktail dress, a string of pearls, sheer black stockings, and high heels. He observed that she appeared well-groomed. Her piercing voice, however, betrayed her inner turmoil as her carefully crafted plan to avoid confrontation began to unravel. Ryan initially assumed that he had forgotten about a dinner engagement, so he flashed his best smile, kissed his fiancée, and announced, "Give me 10 minutes, and I'll be clean-shaven and ready." "To go," he said, ready to go where Caroline shuddered as the words slipped from her lips. He froze, and she continued, "Of course, given how hot you look." After a significant pause, the fiancé replied, "Dear, I'm very sorry, but you misunderstood me. Oh, God, I was so afraid of this conversation that I was going to leave you a note explaining." Ryan was further perplexed upon observing that Caroline's travel bag was positioned adjacent to the front entrance. He then discerned her presence and inquired, "I see you're already here. I'm uncertain as to why you've indicated that you won't be present this weekend. Could you clarify? I've become so engrossed in the wedding preparations that I've neglected to inform you of my whereabouts. I'm currently situated at a hotel in the city center." It took her more than a minute to reply. "I will be with a friend," she said. Ryan took a deep breath. "Since you didn't mention your friend's name, can I assume that you'll be with a man?" Caroline looked guilty. "It's not like that," she said. "He's just a friend." He spoke with a tone of exasperation, as if he could force the words to obey. "You are going to stay in the same room with a man a week before our wedding, and you want me to believe he is just a friend?" He paused, his voice filled with emotion. "I need this weekend. Who is this individual who will be sharing a bed with you?" His voice echoed throughout the room. "It is not like that. He is my friend. I discuss our relationship and our situation." "Is he a psychiatrist or psychologist?" Caroline sank to the floor and remained silent. "Is he a licensed therapist or counselor?" There was no response. "Is he a member of the clergy who advises engaged couples?" She replied in the negative. "However, he is a good listener." "A good listener." Ryan emitted a low growl. "You're going to spend the weekend before our wedding with some unsavory character because he's a good listener." Caroline lowered her head even further, her shoulders drooped, and she seemed to shrink in size. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Ryan waited until she lifted her head. She was sobbing, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were streaming with tears, and it was evident that less than 2 minutes had undone hours of preparation. "I will ask you one last time, who is this individual? I guarantee that I will not harm him. I will find out who he is and, should you proceed with this plan, I will kill him." Caroline collapsed onto the floor and curled up like the dog, which had just chewed its owner's favorite slippers, was scolded and asked to respond. It remained silent. Ryan then removed a mirror from the hallway wall and threw it across the room, where it shattered against the dining room wall and scattered shards of glass across the wooden floor. Caroline immediately stood up. "I had intended to turn off my phone and leave you a note explaining my actions." Ryan's face conveyed a sense of terror, "So had I arrived home at the usual time, you would have already departed." There was no response, only a nod. Ryan attempted to maintain his composure. "And you were going to secretly leave to spend the weekend with Ryan?" Opened his briefcase, retrieved a notepad and a pen, and proceeded to deposit them on the dining table, pushing a chair towards it. It was imperative that the note be of the highest quality. Caroline then sat down and began to write. After a few minutes, she ceased her efforts and placed the pen aside. Ryan then demanded the notepad from her. He demanded the notepad from her, and when she did not immediately comply, he seized it from her. She had written only one sentence: "Next week, I will start a new chapter of my life, and I must do this before it's too late." Ryan appeared devastated. His voice trembled with emotion as he asked, "Tell me the truth. Were you going to admit that you were?" "If I had more time, I would have elucidated my sentiments." "You did not respond to my inquiry. I would have posed the question in a different manner. Do you concur that your actions were intended to fortify our marriage? Such a notion is absurd and devoid of rationale." How could your infidelity enhance the strength of our union? He did not allow her an opportunity to respond. Individuals may seek dissolution of marriage when one partner engages in an extramarital relationship. Marriages may also end as a result of such actions. This development took her by surprise. She had not anticipated that Ryan would threaten to cancel their wedding over this matter. Caroline attempted to identify a rationale for her actions. She resigned and abruptly stated, "I am unable to divulge that information because I was aware that you would respond unfavorably." Ryan immediately became enraged, demanding to know what she was referring to. He asserted that her actions were unacceptable and that he would not marry her the following week or at any point in the future if she did not reveal the man's identity immediately. He further stated that the wedding would be cancelled if she did not comply. That was the extent of Caroline's response. She then proceeded to grasp Ryan by the shoulders. "Ryan, please do not say that you love me more than anything in the world. This is something I have to do. Like that, I love you. There's really only one way to show it." He opened the front door. "This is the last time I'm saying this. Tell me his name or get the hell out of my house." Finally, she could bear it no longer. Scott Jenkins from work. Your boss. That son of a __, older than your father. Ryan screamed. She emitted a high-pitched, anguished cry, as if attempting to flee from an infernal realm. "Have you already engaged in sexual intercourse with him?" There was no response. "Have you already engaged in sexual intercourse with him?" Answer, "Have you already slept with him?" She nodded affirmatively, and this simple gesture had a profound impact on Ryan. His heart pounded wildly, and he feared he might have a heart attack. His head spun, and he grabbed the table to keep from falling. Caroline stood in fear, unable to speak. Ryan took several deep breaths before he could speak. He paused for a moment before speaking. "As far as I recall from the Christmas party, he is married. What are his wife's thoughts on his sexual relationship with a young, attractive blonde woman? She does not seem to mind, given that she is going through menopause and has not been able to have sex for nearly a year. Did she tell you that herself?" "No, Mr. Jenkins." "Scott," he said, "she's too embarrassed to talk about it. Why don't we call her and ask?" "No," Scott said, "it would humiliate her even more. Give me your phone. I'm ready to risk it. I don't have her home number, only her mobile." That means the man sneaks around behind his wife's back. No, he respects her feelings, and doesn't his actions have the potential to diminish her sense of self-worth as a woman? I am perplexed by your acquiescence in his defense. I am at a loss for words. I offer you a choice, leave or be ejected from the premises. I am offended by your use of the term animal. What would you call an engaged woman who engages in an affair with a married man? She did not respond. She turned away from him and she began to mutter to herself before you departed. "I have one final inquiry, why were you intending to spend the weekend with another man?" At last, she spoke. "It is all your fault. You are aware of my role in this. When our relationship intensified, you acknowledged that you had been with 3 other women. I informed you that you were the only man with whom I had been sexually intimate. I had previously asserted that your infidelity would not affect me, but after speaking with Scott, I began to experience feelings of guilt and remorse. Scott advised me that to ensure the success of our marriage, we must enter it as equals. He suggested that I should act now because I had informed him that you were unfaithful. He had always maintained that a woman who cheats on her husband will never remain married to him. As we were not yet married, I would even the score by cheating on him. Once we were married, I would never cheat on him. What has caused you to lose your senses? That was before I met you. I have been 100% faithful to you since our first date." Ryan continued, "So you jeopardized the entire future was at stake for an elderly man with a sexual interest in a woman half his age." "That is not the case at all. I did discuss the matter with him. He made me realize how unfair it was to me, but he never tried to manipulate me. Therefore, it never occurred to you that he had a vested interest in having you even the score. The situation was not as it has been presented. The objective was to provide assistance. It is not reasonable to suggest that the individual in question offered any meaningful input. He did, however, facilitate a process of reflection. This resulted in the realization that there was a possibility of engaging in sexual relationships with 3 different men in order to achieve an equilibrium in the marital relationship. That is an absurd assertion, Ryan interjected. I derived pleasure from sexual intercourse with another man, but I love you so profoundly that I am willing to compromise and accept you as my sole partner. Caroline's demeanor betrayed a hint of irony, as if she had played a trump card. She responded, I understand, Ryan. I am so confused about what to do when Scott. He elucidated the situation, which made perfect sense. It was not supposed to be like this. You are correct, we were supposed to be together forever, faithful to each other. Ryan appeared on the verge of an outburst, and how would you react when you discover that you are sleeping with your boss? No, you are misrepresenting the facts. Tell me, what do you believe will transpire when you return home from your weekend excursion? Did you truly anticipate that I would be the compliant and submissive spouse, expressing gratitude to your father for engaging in an intimate encounter with my fiancée? I had hoped that you would never become aware of this. I have never intended to cause you pain. This would be a secret that I would keep forevermore. I had assumed that you could simply go away for the weekend, simply by turning off your phone and disappearing without telling me where you were going. I would not have realized that you had been unfaithful to me. He regarded her as if she were a naive country girl, yet she continued to speak. Even if you had discovered the truth, I was confident that you would understand the fairness of it all. We would get married and live happily ever after. The word fairness was imbued with a sense of indignation. What about everything you know about me led you to believe that I would still marry you after you had an affair? Scotty said, damn it. Ryan shouted, he's an unscrupulous individual who found a naive woman he could control. No, he's a very caring person who wanted to help our marriage succeed. How many times have you had sex with him or any other man? During our engagement, I engaged in sexual intercourse with another man on 7 or 8 occasions. You seem to believe that this is not a significant number. I did it for our benefit, Caroline sobbed. I hope you will remember the conversation in which I admitted that I was not a virgin. I did not tell you that I had been with 3 different girls before you. I simply said that I had sexual intercourse 3 times with Sally MCD, a girl with whom I had a good relationship. We planned to run away together after high school, but that ended when you came along. Our high school relationship ended abruptly when her mother discovered us in a state of undress. As you are aware, the outcome of that incident was that they departed from our hometown the following day, and I have not had any further communication with her. Since that time, I have not engaged in any further sexual activity with women. Caroline was experiencing a sense of nausea, so I believe you are currently ahead of me by approximately 8 months. I would require the sexual experience with 4 or 5 additional women to achieve a state of parity with you. I do not believe that the aforementioned individual would make such a claim. The right to engage in sexual intercourse with 4 or 5 different women to achieve equality is a questionable proposition. What about your best friend, Laura? You have consistently expressed reservations about her proximity to you. Is it possible that your sister, who is not currently involved with anyone, might also be a factor? Please, no. Provide a compelling rationale for why this course of action is inadvisable. I am prepared to terminate the affair and forego accompanying him on the weekend trip. It is essential to recognize that I made a misstep, but I did so for the benefit of our relationship. You, on the other hand, acted for your own benefit and personal gain. I implore you, Ryan, to reconsider. Another chance, she pleaded. You're too late. I can never trust you again. Please give me one more chance. I swear I will never. Ryan raised his hand. She fell silent. What you did was pure evil. There's no us anymore. You destroyed it. There will be no wedding. Never. 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 Don't say that I love you. I swear I'll never cheat on you again. The individual whom you purport to love is a complete enigma to me. However, I can assert with certainty that I would never have advised you to engage in an illicit affair with a married man. Only a creature capable of destroying marriages could have perpetrated such a heinous act. Caroline could almost feel the bony fingers of death tearing her soul from her chest with each breath she took. She struggled to breathe, tasting bile in her mouth. How do you think your mother will react when she learns the truth? Inform her that we are not getting married because you engaged in an adulterous relationship with an older man. Caroline responded with a scream, stating, "No, I will ensure that everyone is aware of your actions. Our entire family and social circle will know that we are not getting married because you had an affair with a married man." Ryan grabbed her left hand and nearly broke her finger, removing the engagement ring from his former fiancée's finger. He stated, "It's mine. You gave it to me." Her hands flailed at him, attempting to retrieve the symbol of their commitment. "You have betrayed us and everything this ring represents." He clenched it tightly in his fist. "This is over. I cannot marry you. Please leave before I hurt you." The finality of these words caused significant distress to Caroline. She attempted to speak, but her mouth could not produce words. Instead, she emitted a sound like someone dying, struggling for their last breath. Her eyes were wide, her body trembled, and no words were uttered. The room fell into silence, tears streaming down Ryan's cheeks. Caroline rummaged through her memory, attempting to find the appropriate words to salvage her marriage, but nothing came to mind. It was only then that she realized she had been deceived. A sharp knock at the door broke the silence. Caroline recovered from the shock enough to say, "Oh my. That's Scott," she said. "I'll inform him to leave. Please do not create a commotion." Ryan took hold of the baseball bat he had stored by the door. "I will not cause a disturbance," he said. "I will kill him right here in the foyer while you observe." Caroline stood and attempted to stop him. "It is not worth going to jail for," he said. "I do not care." He proceeded past her. "I have nothing to live for," he said. "But if I kill him, I will have avenged the pain he caused me." She attempted to contact him on his cell phone. Ryan, holding the bat in one hand, opened the door. He was prepared to physically confront the elderly man, but instead encountered two police officers. The bat fell from his hand, striking the ceramic tile floor with a loud clunk. The officers ignored him and proceeded to enter the residence and close the door. "Excuse me, ma'am," one of the officers addressed Caroline. "Are you Caroline Bradley?" "Yes," Caroline replied. "What is the problem, officer?" The officers entered the residence and closed the door. "Scott," the officers exchanged glances, as if they were privy to a private joke. "Is everything all right? Did something happen to Loretta?" "No, sir, but about an hour ago Mrs. Jenkins killed her husband in the living room of their home." Caroline fainted and fell to the floor. Ryan went into the kitchen and returned with a large pot full of water. He poured it over her face. Her once beautifully styled hair now looked like a drowned rat. It took several minutes before she could speak. "Oh God, Scotty is dead," she sobbed. "Yes ma'am, she shot him 6 times in the chest with a .38 caliber revolver, then reloaded and shot him 6 more times point blank in the face." The detective said it was the coldest thing they'd ever seen. The only sound was Ryan's laughter. The police looked at him as if he were insane. It seems that she did not allow her husband to depart. "After all, you are needed at the station. Mrs. Jenkins informed a neighbor that she would kill you for ruining her marriage. We have deployed half a dozen squads to patrol the area, but they believe you will be safer at the station." She had a pale, stunned face. "Do not return." His voice faded as his former fiancée let out a terrible scream. The police half-carried Caroline to their vehicle. Ryan observed as the blue lights he vanished into the distance, attempting to comprehend how his life had deteriorated. 3 robust swigs of whiskey facilitated verbal expression, while the 4th prompted the awakening of his writing abilities. He proceeded to compose an email to numerous individuals, including family, friends, colleagues, and members of the church choir. Ryan titled the email, "Why I Am Not Marrying Caroline Bradle, the Deceiver and Beast." He anticipated that the evening news would feature a prominent story about a middle-aged woman who had killed her husband due to his infidelity. An elderly woman has been accused of killing her husband because he had an affair with a 25-year-old woman. It is disgraceful to reveal that this woman is my former fiancée, Caroline Bradle. She was a prissy and proper individual who always looked down on her friends for engaging in extramarital relationships. As a result of her actions, she has become responsible for a 60-year-old tragedy. The elderly gentleman was the victim of a shooting. It is now apparent why I am not getting married. I am grateful that this incident occurred before I made the unfortunate decision to marry a deceitful individual. I have been informed that the police are concealing the identity of Caroline. This is because the widow of her former partner is seeking to take her life. I hope that she succeeds. He received approximately half a dozen responses before his phone rang. The initial call was from a local newspaper, requesting an interview. He sent the reporter a couple of photographs of her in a tight bikini and proceeded to recount the story of her infidelity. He subsequently agreed to an interview on a local radio station, scheduled to last for 2 hours. Ryan spent the remainder of his time speaking with journalists, and in response to the numerous emails he received, the majority of which were from Caroline's friends and family, he was met with overwhelming support. However, as the narrative became increasingly repetitive, he decided to take a break and begin packing Caroline's belongings into black trash bags. He eventually filled 4 bags and transported them to the garage near the TR, where Ryan resided. Ryan's neighborhood was a suburban one, where such incidents were uncommon. The incident occurred in a community that had not experienced a murder in 5 years. The following morning, the local newspaper published a headline reading, "Love Triangle Ends in Death." Television stations also descended on the community, each broadcasting their evening news with photos of the fugitive suspect, as well as Ryan's former fiancée in a bikini and the victim. It was dark outside when Ryan decided to finish off the following morning. The television crews arrived just in time to film a locksmith changing the locks. The scene was concluded with the hanging of a sign bearing the words, "No trespassing." 2 hours later, the police found Loretta Jenkins asleep in her vehicle, situated a few blocks from Caroline's apartment. She was arrested without incident. Ryan was suffering from a hangover when someone began knocking. He yelled, "Get away from my front door." "It's the police," came the reply. The only item in the trash bags that she had with her. "It would be greatly appreciated if you could inform her that I will never forgive her and will never speak to her again." He heard her screaming from the patrol car. "Ryan, I love you." He slammed the door and turned on the television. He switched to a movie channel and leaned back in his chair to watch a black and white western. There was no one else in the room. He never admitted to sending the photographs that prompted Mrs. Jenkins to discover the affair. However, it was widely acknowledged that Scotty's secretary displayed a self-satisfied demeanor when she arrived at work on Monday morning. Caroline became an isolated figure in the community. Consequently, she was dismissed from her position even before she could enter her office. When the proprietor passed away and his wife's legal counsel proved ineffective, to prove temporary insanity, the business was sold to a Chinese investor who promptly dismissed all employees and relocated operations to a small island nation. Caroline's family and friends were unified in their condemnation of the adulteress. The day after she testified in court, she packed all her belongings into her car and set off to start a new life as she drove out of town. On her last visit to Ryan's house, she observed a "sold" sign posted in the yard. Attempting to maintain her composure, she continued driving but was unable to see through her tears. She brought the car to a stop, closed her eyes, and attempted to recall the sensation of Ryan's embrace. She found herself wishing for death. 6 years later, Ryan returned to his hometown for the funeral of a childhood friend who had died a hero. In the Alumni Association of Iraq had extended an invitation to the entire class, and a substantial number of attendees was anticipated. This marked the inaugural occasion of his return since that fateful night. His wife, Brooklyn, affectionately known as Brooke C.L. Ed, by his side, he led her through the town square. She was keenly aware that with each step, he was confronted with profoundly distressing recollections, and she instinctively tightened her grasp. Their son, Ryan, a spirited 3-year-old, provided a welcome distraction from the somber atmosphere. One year the elderly gentleman was disinclined to await the slow pace at which the other individual was proceeding. The child's parents proceeded to allow him to explore independently. Upon reaching an antique shop, his mother and father paused to observe the interior. At this moment, the child, named Ryan Robert Erickson, failed to maintain visual contact with his surroundings and collided with a woman exiting the establishment. The woman stepped back and dropped her bag on the sidewalk, resulting in several items, including a condolence card, falling out. The woman's spine prickled with a sudden chill as she heard his name. His mother turned to the woman and said, "We've been in the car for 6 hours, and he has too much pent-up energy to walk." Little Ryan approached the woman and said, "I'm sorry. I bumped into you and made you cry. Are you okay?" Brooke asked, "Your son is a very well." The man, who exhibited the manners of a gentleman, should be proud of his son, as Ryan Sr. knelt down to pick up the bag. He recognized the woman, and their eyes met. They continued to look at each other while his son helped him pick up a fallen pin. The man silently handed the bag to the woman. Then, Brooke noticed tears in her husband's eyes. She immediately understood who this woman was. She stepped between them like a lioness protecting her cubs. The painful memory and her husband's consistent avoidance of her family prompted the woman to speak. As Caroline receded, Brooke's words reverberated, "You are not forever." The woman responded with gratitude for Brooke's presence and attention. If this account has piqued your interest, we invite you to subscribe, like, and comment.